At BRE, we look at all aspects of buildings. My team actually deals with the internal environments of buildings, so that's things like air quality, noise, lighting. So in our work, we're in quite a good position to comment on what we've called here the air quality challenge. It's a very big subject, and I've only got 10 minutes, but I'm going to try and, without scaremongering or doing anything like that, I'd like to raise awareness of some of the issues, what's important and what can maybe be done to tackle the challenge. The work we do ranges from research, so we do a lot of research, we do European funded research, we do UK government funded research, we also work with academia, we fund PhDs and university centres of excellence. But more than that, we go into buildings where things have sadly gone wrong. It all seems very dramatic, but the fact is we learn from that and we can then research it, we can then use it for advisory work as well. So very quickly, this is what I'll try and cover in the next 7 or 8 minutes. I say it is a very big subject, so bear with me. It's very much in the news, has been now for some years. Just 2 weeks ago, this report came out, which I commend you to read. If you go onto the Royal College of Physicians website, you'll see a summary version or the full version. But basically, it's telling us what we already probably know. It talks about what we might do to reduce pollution, outdoors and indoors. It tells us about the demographic inequalities, where where there's poverty, there is more effects. But most sobering of all, it tells us that at least 40,000 deaths per year in the UK can be attributed to air pollution outdoors. So please have a look at that if you want more details. Now again, without scaremongering, the effects of poor air quality can range from what we might call discomfort or irritation, getting a bit worse into things like allergies, through to actually morbidity and mortality. I won't go into it, but obviously a lot of this is to do with the respiratory system, but it goes further than that. It can be to do with your skin, to do with your nervous system, to do with your mental health, and more importantly, your performance at work when you're learning or whatever. So there's a whole gamut of effects. As I said, we're well aware about the air pollution now, I think, and this picture was taken one of my colleagues while doing some work in London in the last year at the top, but also we're well aware of the effects of power generation, of industry, and of course cars, and that's been very much in the news as well, because car emissions, there are steps to reduce it, but as we well know, that's not always happening. But what about indoors? Sometimes neglected, but the actual truth of it is that in the developed world we spend over 80% of our time indoors. More than that, some of the most vulnerable people in society spend their time indoors. So as well as all the pollution that can actually gain ingress from outside, from all the things we've talked about, there's a whole range of things that are generated indoors. It's the products we use, our habits, our cleaning products, our perfumes, our air fresheners. And this diagram shows you some of that. So it is a complex situation, and in the last 10 years it's been slightly exacerbated to some extent by some of the things we've had to do due to regulatory and societal drivers. Many people are aware of the build, tight, ventilate, right mantra. Quite rightly, energy efficiency has been top of the agenda, and we mustn't use as much energy to heat our homes. They must be better insulated, they must be less leaky. The unintended consequence of that is that when we build very tight and we don't ventilate, we can have problems. So going from natural ventilation, on the top left you can see there's no real problem. If you're in a rural setting, you can open the windows when you like. Natural ventilation can still take a very big part. As we move into urban, we start to see problems. There are restrictions, as you can see here, on some of the windows. In some cases, outside a busy road, we might not want to even open our windows. Noise, security, and air pollution, all factors. We have things like trickle vents at the top right. Some people don't understand how to use them, don't use them, and they don't replace what in the old days was natural leakage. So it was a leaky house, but we did get infiltration. We got adventitious ventilation, and that helped give us fresh air. But you'll understand now that the problem we've got, because we've got outdoor air pollution. Yes, we want to bring in fresh air, but we need to bring it in at the right time and sometimes treat it, so it becomes very complex. When the energy efficiency agenda came in, One of the things to achieve the credits you needed to be able to build energy efficient houses or buildings was to use mechanical ventilation. We've seen a lot of cases where people weren't skilled up enough to install, to commission and to maintain things that get better, but we do see these sort of things. So this is a filter, for instance, top left. That's an external filter after 6 months of use. And you can see that what's happened there that from the outside pollution. Bottom right, that's an internal filter. So you can see after 6 months of use in an urban setting, why it's important for people to change their filters in their mechanical ventilation system. But when it's hidden away in the loft, top right, sometimes hard to access, they're more interested in other aspects of their house. Are they going to change the filters? So all these things really combine to make it more of a problem. We also see ducting badly fitted, you get condensation problems from that. And here's a great example where someone bought about 3 miles of this ducting, but it wouldn't fit through the joists. So all those things have come in. As I said, it is getting better, but we had to catch up. And all this goes really to make the situation more complex yet again. What's the ultimate solution? So I hate to say it, but it's air conditioning. Now, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. But there are drivers. It's not only air quality, it's thermal comfort. You'll be aware that in some places overheating is starting to manifest itself, not only in the summer, but throughout the year, where we don't have sufficient ventilation to reject heat. So if we're not careful, we will go to comfort cooling and air conditioning. Clearly that's not an option throughout society, so we have to be more clever. So in the spirit of this session, how do we raise the challenge? And the last slide really is just showing you some of the ways, very quickly, that we can do that. Now, one way is to have better technology. So here's just a proprietary air purifying system. There are also mechanical filter systems. There are some very clever things out in the market. You'll see some of them here today. That's something we can do, but it's quite a local thing. It's a choice thing, and sometimes it's a cost thing. Source control throughout society. So whether it be industry, power generation, using our cars, using airplanes, that's all got to be part of it. We've got to reduce the amount of pollution outside. We can have better filters. I mean, these two filters show you for the same window in a mechanical ventilation system. That's a bog standard filter, we might call. This one's got much more surface area, but it costs probably 5-10 times more. It might last longer, so it's all to do with cost. But there are things we can do. And finally, the other thing we can do is actually moderate the buildings we live in and work in and learn in by moderating the amount of pollution that comes in, and also in some cases trying to reduce the pollution in the building. So there are several projects going on. I'm going to mention EcoC. The BRE are actually involved in EcoC. I've got some of these brochures, and we have a stand here today, E4106. But this is an example of a project where we're taking new eco materials, designing them to actually improve indoor air quality by taking out some of the pollutants I've talked about. And there's a lot more in this area that can be done, both actively and passively, to improve the air quality. So I hope that's been useful, just as to sort of give you an idea of the challenge we have and what we need to do. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Andy. There was a very interesting, and I think it's a relevant and kind of, it was a fun story. It was in the newspaper last month, which was, I caught my attention as the father of a 13-year-old boy, because they were saying basically that the air quality in teenagers' bedrooms was actually destroying their brain's ability to function. And I suppose, it's an interesting story, but if you've ever been in my son's bedroom, you kind of get to know what it's all about. But the point about it was that the air quality that we live in our houses, what we have in our houses, really does have is having a detrimental effect on our health, but also on our well-being.
Yes, and I think it's complex because we spend different amounts of time in different buildings. So we spend a lot of time at home, a lot of that time sleeping, but we also may go to school, we'll go into shops, we'll go into an office, we'll go into a factory. So it's a combination, and the worry is that there'll be a cumulative effect. In some cases, we're introducing stuff that really we might not want to be there, but it smells nice. We have a plug-in freshener, whatever. For some people, that can cause problems, and I stress that it's only very small percentage of people will be sensitive to certain things. But as a race, as we all know, we're getting more sensitised to chemicals, these sort of things, and the problem will only get worse if we're not careful.
But tackling this issue, I imagine it's a massive business opportunities, given that we've got 25 million houses which are already built and are generally built to Victorian leaky standards. And as we upgrade them and retrofit them, presumably there are all sorts of things that we need to build in, and therefore business opportunities to actually make sure that the air quality we move towards isn't just if you move away from drafts, you don't introduce another problem. What are those opportunities?
Yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities. There are new insulation systems. There are the opportunity to bring in air at certain times from certain places. But the most important thing is the balance. And we have to start thinking about if the outdoor air pollution is getting worse, obviously we don't want to be bringing too much of that air in. We have to be careful what we're doing. But there are multiple opportunities, I think. Some of it's behavioural, as I said, but some of it is actually thinking about when we refurbish a house. Yes, insulate it, but don't insulate it to the point where if you're in an urban setting, you just can't get fresh air without flinging open the windows all day and bringing in lots of particles or whatever. So it's a balance. But I think with the internet, there's much more out there for people to look at. But as we've always said, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, so you need to look into it and make sure you're doing the right thing.
You know, you look around an event like Ecobuild, and we are using more and more, I suppose, non-traditional materials. I mean, are there is there work that's going on to make sure that we are keeping up, with what is in these new materials, to make sure that we're not introducing new issues and new problems to our build quality?
There is. I mean, happily, the formaldehyde case is a good one, because 20, 30 years ago we were using formaldehyde everywhere. We became aware of it, and now there are quite strict controls throughout Europe and the rest of the world for emissions of formaldehyde. With VOCs, which is a much wider class, it's more difficult, but there are harmonised methods now to make sure there's factory control of the new materials to make sure, as you say, we're not introducing huge amounts. So.
Andy Dengel from BRE, thanks very much for bringing us up to speed with this issue of interior air quality, indoor air quality. Andy Dengel, round of applause, thank you very much. Thanks.